Welcome to another deep dive. Today we're going to be tackling a word that you wanted to understand a little better.
Okay.
And that word is woke.
Oh, yeah. Woke.
It's one that we hear everywhere these days, but what does it really mean? Where did it come from? We're going to unpack all of that, and luckily we have a fantastic academic article that's going to help us do that.
Yep.
It's called Woke: Origin, Evolution, and Controversies. I love how straightforward that title is. It just gets right into it.
It is a very clear roadmap for what we're going to be talking about today.
It is, yeah. So, and it's fascinating how woke has become such a cultural touchstone. I mean, it's almost like this linguistic chameleon,
Yeah.
constantly changing color depending on who's using it and why.
That's a really good point. I think that's one of the things that makes this deep dive so interesting. It really does mean different things to different people. And I think to really understand it, we do have to go back to its origins.
Yeah.
And I'm glad we're starting with this article because it really does take us back to the beginning. We're going all the way back to the 1930s.
Yeah.
Within the African-American community. And it's important to remember that back then, it wasn't about social justice in the broad sense that we think of it today.
Right.
It had a much more, I guess you could say, a practical meaning.
Yeah.
The article even points to this song from 1938 by Lead Belly.
Oh, yeah?
Where he uses the phrase, "stay woke," as a warning about the very real dangers that Black Americans were facing at the time.
So it was about vigilance.
Exactly.
About being aware of your surroundings and the potential threats.
Right, and almost a survival tactic in a way.
Yeah, a call to be alert to the injustices and dangers of the time.
Yeah, and very specific to that historical moment.
Yeah.
But then we start to see how that meaning evolves.
Yeah.
And particularly when we get to the civil rights movement of the 1960s.
Right. How did that meaning change?
Well, I think during the civil rights movement, woke really starts to take on a more explicitly political meaning.
Okay.
So it's not just about being aware of racism.
Yeah.
It's about actively resisting it.
Okay.
It's about, being engaged.
Yeah.
Being, ready to act.
Yeah.
And fight for equality.
So it goes from a warning to a rallying cry.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
I think that's a really good way to put it.
Yeah.
And then, of course, we fast forward to the 2010s.
Yeah.
Which is really when woke explodes onto the scene.
Right.
Particularly with movements like Black Lives Matter.
Yeah, and it seems like the meaning shifted again during this time.
It did. And I think one of the biggest shifts is that woke expands beyond just racial injustice.
Okay.
To encompass a wider range of social justice issues. So now we're talking about sexism, homophobia, economic inequality.
Right.
And it really starts to become about recognizing how these different forms of oppression actually intersect and impact people's lives.
And that's where the concept of intersectionality comes in, right?
Exactly.
It's this idea that someone's identity based on things like their race, gender, or sexual orientation can lead to them experiencing multiple forms of disadvantage or discrimination.
Right, and this idea of intersectionality becomes very, very deeply intertwined with woke culture in the 2010s.
Yeah.
So now it's not just about a single issue, it's about understanding the complexities of social justice.
Right.
And understanding how different systems of oppression work together.
Yeah, and it seems like social media play a huge role in amplifying that message.
Absolutely. I mean, the hashtag stay woke really takes on a life of its own, particularly among younger generations.
Yeah.
And it really helps to connect people across geographical boundaries who are passionate about these issues.
Right.
And creates a sense of global solidarity.
So woke goes from a warning to a rallying cry to this global phenomenon fueled by social media.
It's really quite a journey when you think about it.
It is, yeah. But with that rise in popularity came a backlash, didn't it?
Of course.
Suddenly, woke wasn't just a term used by activists. It started being used by their critics as well.
Yeah, and this is where things start to get really, really divisive.
Yeah.
Conservative commentators begin using woke as a pejorative term, almost a way to dismiss or mock progressive ideas.
Like it became this shorthand for everything they saw as wrong with progressive politics, right?
Yeah.
Too sensitive, out of touch with reality, that kind of thing.
Right. And, in a way, this reflects this broader tension that exists in society between those who advocate for traditional values and those who are pushing for progressive change.
It's so interesting how a single word can become such a battleground for these larger ideological conflicts.
It really is.
But it doesn't stop there.
No.
Then we have corporations jumping on the bandwagon and the term woke washing emerges.
Oh, yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, woke washing is essentially when brands or companies trying to appear woke in order to appeal to consumers,
Yeah.
especially younger, more socially conscious demographics. And it really raises these questions about authenticity.
Mm-hmm.
Are these companies genuinely committed to social justice,
Right.
or are they simply using it as a marketing tactic?
Yeah, it can feel a bit cynical, can't it? Like, companies are exploiting these important social justice movements for profit.
Yeah, and I think consumers are getting wise to it.
Mm.
They can often tell when a brand's message feels disingenuous or superficial.
And that's where we'll pick up in part 2, exploring how woke started to influence our culture and media landscape and the challenges that came along with it. So we saw how woke evolved from this like call for vigilance within the Black community to a broader term encompassing various social justice issues.
Yeah.
And I'm curious to dive into how this term kind of like infiltrated our media and culture in general. I mean,
Wow.
it's like woke is everywhere these days: movies, TV shows, music, even advertising.
It really is. You become kind of this like inescapable force in our cultural landscape.
Yeah.
Um, and as you mentioned, this has sparked these new debates about representation,
Mm-hmm.
authenticity, and whether creative works are pushing a particular agenda.
Like take the entertainment industry, for example.
Yeah.
We see more diverse casting storylines addressing social issues,
Hmm.
and even celebrities using their platforms to advocate for causes.
Right.
Is this a direct result of woke culture, or are there other factors at play?
Well, I think it's probably a combination of factors.
Okay.
But woke culture certainly played a role.
Yeah.
It created an environment where audiences,
Yeah.
particularly younger generations, were demanding more diverse and inclusive content.
Right.
And that put pressure on studios and networks to reflect those changing expectations.
But as we discussed earlier, the term woke became like this double-edged sword.
Yeah.
And some people started viewing this push for inclusivity as too woke,
Mhm.
or even as a form of forced diversity.
Right.
So how did that criticism play out?
Well, it led to a backlash. Some accusing the entertainment industry of sacrificing quality storytelling for the sake of just ticking diversity boxes.
Yeah.
And there were concerns about tokenism,
Yeah.
about characters feeling like stereotypes rather than fully developed individuals.
Right. And that's an interesting point, and it's not just limited to entertainment, right?
Not at all.
I mean, brands and companies have also faced criticism for appearing to co-opt woke language and imagery
Yeah,
without, demonstrating real commitment to the causes that they claim to support.
absolutely. I
Yeah.
mean, that's really the essence of woke washing, right?
Yeah.
Using this social justice language as a marketing ploy
Right.
without actually enacting any meaningful change within the company or industry.
Right. And it can range from brands simply using inclusive imagery in their ads
Right.
to companies making public statements of support for certain causes,
Yeah.
but then not actually backing those statements up with any concrete actions.
Yeah, I think it creates a sense of distrust. Consumers are becoming increasingly savvy,
Yeah.
and they can often spot when a brand's message just feels disingenuous or superficial.
So amidst all this backlash, did woke culture achieve any positive outcomes?
Yeah.
Or has it become more of just a buzzword that's lost its meaning and impact?
Well, I think there's no denying that woke culture has had a significant impact on our social landscape.
Yeah.
I mean, it's sparked these crucial conversations about privilege, about systemic inequality, about the need for greater representation and inclusion.
Right.
It's challenged long-held assumptions.
Yeah.
And it's pushed society to confront uncomfortable truths.
It seems like a lot of the debate around woke hinges on this question of authenticity, whether individuals, institutions, or even entire movements are genuinely committed to the values that they espouse.
Precisely. And that's where the real work lies.
Yeah.
It's not enough to simply adopt the language of social justice. It's about translating those words into meaningful action. It's about challenging our own biases, holding ourselves accountable, and working to create a more equitable and just world.
So woke might be a term that's sparked division and debate.
Yeah.
But it's also prompted this critical self-reflection both on an individual and a societal level.
I think that's a really important point.
Yeah.
It's not just about pointing fingers at others.
Right.
It's about looking inward as well.
Yeah, and I'm curious to explore like the potential implications of woke as we move forward,
Right.
especially given, the increasing interconnectedness of our world and the challenges that we're facing.
Yeah.
I guess that's where we'll pick up in part 3. We've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive, from the historical roots of woke to its evolution in the digital age.
Hmm.
We've seen how this word has kind of sparked both progress and backlash.
Definitely.
Now, I want to shift gears a little bit and explore what the future might hold for woke.
Okay.
As our world is grappling with climate change, political polarization, rapid technological advancements,
Hmm.
can a term like woke still be relevant?
That's a great question, and it's something that the article actually touches on.
Okay.
And it offers some interesting perspectives.
Yeah.
On the one hand, you could argue that woke might become even more crucial in this complex, interconnected world.
Hmm.
Think about it. Addressing climate change requires this global awakening
Right.
to the urgency of the crisis.
Mm.
Bridging political divides requires empathy,
Hmm.
a willingness to understand different perspectives.
Yeah, so those core values at the heart of woke awareness, empathy, action
Right.
could actually become even more vital in navigating the challenges ahead.
Exactly.
But I can also see the other side of the argument. Some
Yeah.
people believe that woke has become too divisive,
Yeah.
too loaded with baggage to be effective.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's definitely a risk that woke could devolve into just a meaningless buzzword,
Yeah.
a term that's thrown around without any real substance or action behind it.
Right.
So I think the key moving forward is to focus on the underlying values of woke,
Yeah.
rather than getting caught up in the semantics of the word itself.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah,
It's about walking the walk, not just talking the talk.
exactly.
What would that look like in practice, though?
Well, I mean, it means moving beyond performative activism
Okay.
and engaging in meaningful change
Hmm.
within our communities and our spheres of influence.
Yeah.
It could involve supporting organizations working on the front lines of social justice issues,
Mhm.
having those difficult conversations with people who hold different views,
Right.
or even challenging systemic inequalities within our workplaces and institutions.
So it's about channeling that woke energy
Mhm.
into concrete action, into actually making a difference.
Yeah.
It's not just about being aware of problems. It's about actively working to solve them.
Exactly, and I think that's where we see the true potential of woke,
Yeah.
not as a label or a trend, but as a catalyst for positive change.
That's a powerful way to frame it. Maybe woke isn't the end goal. Maybe it's just a stepping stone on a much longer journey
Right.
towards social justice and a more equitable world.
Yeah, and maybe it's a sign of progress that the values embedded in woke are no longer seen as radical,
Okay.
but are increasingly becoming mainstream expectations.
That's an optimistic way to view it.
Yeah.
As we wrap up this deep dive, I'm curious what stands out to you as the most important takeaway from our discussion.
For me, it's the reminder that language is constantly evolving,
Yeah.
and that the meaning of words like woke can shift over time.
Mm-hmm.
What matters most is that we engage with these ideas critically, thoughtfully, and with a willingness to challenge our own assumptions.
I love that. It's about being open to learning, to growing, and to evolving our understanding of these complex issues.
Yeah.
And it's a reminder that each of us has a role to play in shaping a more just and equitable future,
Right.
regardless of what labels we use.
Absolutely. It's an ongoing conversation, and it's one that we all need to be a part of.
And on that note, we'll leave you with one final thought to ponder.
Okay?
How can you take the insights that we've discussed today and apply them to your own life?
Mm-hmm.
How can you move beyond simply being woke and become a true agent of change?
Keep asking those questions, keep learning, and keep pushing for a better world.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. It's been a fascinating journey.